Hello, I just got out of the shower, hence I look the way I look. So if I look showered and sweaty, it is the state of Los Angeles these days to some extent, which is just you get in the shower and you come out, and if you're indoors, you probably break into a sweat. It's nice to be outdoors, and that's why everything looks like I just got out of the shower. Okay. I'm really happy about the fact that I'm doing these videos with this kind of current transit stuff that I just recently started, because it makes the whole process so much more enjoyable for me, and there are new things to discover and new things for me, new epiphanies for me to have, new things to communicate, new things to dwell upon, new things to articulate. Because in a certain sense, I also want to grow, and I also want to share different aspects of what I observe related to planets and signs and transits. And I also want to get more enjoyment out of this, and I understand if some of these videos now are becoming much more astrologically, well, more advanced than some of the new moon, full moon videos I've been doing, but you know, those videos are still happening and being done. So you have the option of diving into this and taking from it whatever it is that you feel applies, and leaving whatever it is that does not apply. If you feel like some of the stuff is getting a little too detailed or sometimes a little confusing, astrology should not be running your life, nor should any sense of divination. You need to have your hands on the driving wheel. So take from it whatever it is that feels relevant and interesting, and move on. I'm certainly enjoying doing this, and preparing for this Venus and Libra video has been an absolute pleasure. I was thinking about it yesterday. As I was thinking about it, you know, just epiphanies and clarity and things that I've been feeling but have not articulated, all of that started to come through, and things I feel like I want to convey. On September the 14th, a few days ago, Venus entered the sign of Libra from Virgo, as did Mercury. This is a Venus and Libra video. And Venus will be here till October the 8th. So September 14th to October the 8th. I am going to, once I process this, remove the Venus and Virgo video from the current transits playlist. That doesn't mean that the video is gone. The video is very much there. All you need to do is look at my videos, and if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the Venus in Virgo video. It's just not going to be in the current transits playlist because it's not a current transit anymore. And as I update the transits, I'm going to remove, I'm going to do a Mercury in Libra video, and then I'm going to remove the Mercury in Virgo video from the current transits playlist. It'll still be there with all my other videos. Sorry about this intro, but I feel like I need to give it because there's something new that I'm doing here, and I've started here. Venus has gone from a sign Virgo where it was uncomfortable to a sign Libra that it rules and therefore is extremely comfortable in. As I mentioned in my Mercury in Virgo video, I'm getting clearer, at least in the work that I'm doing, that having a planet that is debilitated or fallen or weak is a problem. But having a planet that is strong can also be a challenge or a problem. Ultimately, when I talked about that, I talked about us transcending our astrology, us understanding our propensities, and in a certain sense, I will continue to maintain that discernment is required when it comes to anything astrological or any astrological interpretations. Test what feels right to you or true to you or not, and discard what doesn't. But ultimately, you really don't need any of this if you just somehow are tapped into your own internal compass and are ready to take on the karmic consequences of whatever it is that you do. Karma is acquired all the time based on what it is that you say, do, write, act, don't act. Karma is unavoidable. So if you choose to leave all this aside and just say, you know what, I'm going to be in my boat and I'm going to navigate it and I'll take what comes and I'll handle it, you don't really need any of this. So when it comes to transcending our astrology, it's a question of applying a certain amount of common sense to whatever it is that our propensities might be. And when I talk about Venus and Libra, I'm going to be talking about these propensities in a second. Understanding that when a planet is strong, it's certainly better than when a planet is weak, but also realizing that a planet in its strength can sort of tip the scales, so to speak. I love the fact that I just said tip the scales. I do this extemporaneously, and And if we're going to talk about Libra, and I'm going to talk about the sign of Libra first, because Venus rules Libra. There's no other video better in which to talk about certain archetypal truths about the sign of Libra and misconceptions about the sign of Libra. It is truly one of the more misunderstood signs. When it comes to the planet Venus and when it comes to the divine feminine, we've been talking a lot about Venus recently. Any number of previous Venus videos over the past couple of months will show you that. The idea of it being a planet, or her being a planet, that uses archetypally feminine wisdom to step back from active thinking or doing to let things happen, to let the greater wisdom, the greater intelligence that is at work, the intelligence that allows bodies to heal, that allows babies to be born, that allows for amazing, miraculous things to happen, for a certain harmonious balance. If I sound like I'm putting terms in italicizing them as I speak, the harmonious balance, scales, justice, tipping the scales, these are all very Libran concepts. But the idea of us, our minds and science barely catching up to the way higher intelligence works. How does the trees know to stay away from each other sometimes, or commingle, or how does a being that is a parasite know what it is that it gets to be a parasite of or to? That kind of truly amazing, marvelous, miraculous intelligence that doesn't require human intervention or thought, Mars, Mercury, but keeps things in a state of receiving, allowing, permitting. And when we talked about Venus being in Virgo prior to September the 14th, we talked about the fact that because Venus was in a sign that was all about active, because Venus was on what I will call the axis of manifestation. When I think of the Virgo-Pisces axis, I think of it in my terms, the word I use for it is the axis of manifestation. Virgo being a sign that is actively trying to create and organize and manage and make things happen, and is all about forcing a response, a desired action, forcing a desired result, or making sure a desired result happens, or at its highest and best and most balanced, doing the work, doing the hard work to try and ensure a desired action. But then at its highest, the ball will get lobbed off to Pisces, where it will release it and let things happen and fall as they need to, the axis of manifestation. Do the best that you can, but know when to let go and let Piscean energy produce the result that needs to be produced. When we talked about Venus in Virgo, we talked about the fact that our capacity to receive, our capacity to allow, was diminished. So while Venus was in Virgo, and Mercury certainly being in Virgo, there was this, and with Virgo in its unbalanced state, there's a desire to take a square peg and force it into a round hole. Whether you expect people to be different than who they are, whether you want your responses to be different from what they are, whatever you want something, and your life is going to be an exercise in frustration based on where Virgo is in your chart if you do not determine or figure out how you can do what you need to do and let go. The Virgo-Pisces axis of manifestation, Virgo archetype, at its balanced and imbalanced. When we move from Virgo to Libra, we move from the axis of manifestation to what I call the axis of identity. And this is a really interesting word, because for a long time I thought that the Aries-Libra axis was the axis of relationship. But it is the axis of identity. I'm not going to go over my thinking. If anything, I'm going to see as planets move into Scorpio whether it is the Taurus-Scorpio axis that I consider the axis of relationship, but we'll come to that. When it comes to the sign of Libra, Venus is considered a feminine planet. And Venusian things are those that are polite and beautiful and harmonious. And especially when it comes to Venus, are looking for harmony between people, cooperation, handshakes, putting the other party first, reaching win-win solutions. These are the conventional understanding of the sign of Libra. Conventional understanding of the sign of Libra. I'm going to talk about why I think that some of that is misplaced. Diplomacy, harmony, balance, peace. Sometimes this can spill over into creative and artistic harmony. Harmony related to decor, interior decoration, exterior decoration, keeping things balanced, understanding that your environment affects your state of mind, being stress-free, being free, being peaceful, being balanced, etc., etc., etc. What we forget is that Libra is still a cardinal sign, like Aries and Capricorn and Cancer. There are two masculine cardinal signs, Aries and Capricorn, that externally operate clearly as cardinal signs. They go and they get what they want. They go and make things happen. They are leadership signs. They are action-oriented signs. They are cardinal signs, fixed signs, and mutable signs. Cardinal signs, if I were to just use a sentence, act and go after what they want, and our leadership signs, fixed signs, stabilize, conserve, maintain. Mutable signs change, start to shift. When it comes to cardinal signs, as opposed to, say, mutable signs, cardinal signs don't shift allegiances. Mutable signs do. Shockingly, sometimes, surprisingly. One morning this is happening, another afternoon this is happening, another evening this is happening. Can't quite pin down a mutable sign necessarily. There's a flexibility and a comfort with change and with understanding where things are going. Cardinal signs are directed and clear about what it is that they want, and they go after it and they make change happen. With Aries and Capricorn, we expect those signs to act that way. With Cancer and Libra, we have a tendency to consider these feminine cardinal signs as namby-pamby signs. Oh, it's Libra. Everything is beautiful. Librans are polite. They're kind. They're decent. They're always reaching for harmony. They're always, Libra is a leadership sign. And yes, typically people with a sun in Libra wear velvet gloves. But the velvet glove is a Venusian exterior. All you need to do is Google Libra leaders and you will know what I mean. It is not a sign to be messed with. And for all its emphasis on peace and justice and balance, like other cardinal signs, it in its own way is an intensely dogmatic sign. The exterior may be polite. I have never met someone with strong Libra placements, particularly with the sun in Libra, who is not, once the surface is scratched, a stubborn powerhouse, not to be messed with and not to be shifted. And just as, if I can borrow the term fixed, I feel that calling fixed signs fixed is somewhat a misnomer, but it's not quite as pithy to call them stabilizing or maintaining. Just like Aries and Capricorn, Libra is also fixed in its intent, and once it decides what its principles are, it doesn't shift quite so easily, and it goes in that direction. It can be pretty stubborn. It's just that in Libran terms, the thinking is that it is fighting either for peace or for balance or for justice. But it is the individual Libran's idea of peace, balance, or justice. You have a leader like Putin, and you have a leader like Gandhi, born with the sun in Libra. And these are both fascinating examples. Because insofar as whether you are choosing nonviolence or you're choosing from your own perspective stealth, as a way of getting what you want, these are both pretty fixed and dogmatic examples of how it is that these individuals, and as I said, just Google Libra leaders and then tell me whether these are fuzzy-wuzzy people, in their own way, whether the approach is nonviolent or whether the approach is stealthy, in their own way, these are people who are very clear about what they believe and what it is that they want to fight for and how they want to fight for it. They have justified, Libra term, Libra word, their leadership style and philosophy, and won't budge from it. They may be courtly, they may be courteous, they may be mild externally in the way that they conduct their business. They may be polite, they may be Venusian insofar as they don't attack directly and they don't have a Mars operating strongly in their exterior. They might be quiet, but you remove that velvet glove and you realize that it is only a glove. When you have a planet like Venus move into the sign of Libra, what happens is the planet that rules Libra has moved into Libra. The divine feminine has come into a place, come into her own sign that is ostensibly all about balance, justice, peace, and harmony. And she's going to go about creating this in a Venusian way. What is going to happen is that if you think of scales and you think of there being weights on scales that have been kept for a while, and therefore there might be an imbalance, or if there's a balance, it's kind of a precarious balance, Venus will come in and she will remove those weights. Now, either Venus will come in and remove those weights and bring everything to a level and a lightness in her higher evolved form, or she will do it in such a way that she'll remove the weight and the scales will go clang, 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 until they reach the center. The absence of Mars means that the way this will likely be achieved in its higher or evolved form will be through a handshake, will be through an invitation, will be through love. The unevolved way of going about it will be through passive aggression, stealth. The female archetype, the number one thing that Mars, the male principle, whatever your biological gender, points fingers at to Venus, the female archetype, is you never say what you exactly want, you're never direct, you're never clear, you're never upfront, you just do things in this passive-aggressive way. While Venus is in Libra, what we're going to see is a balancing of the scales, particularly when it comes to relationships. If things have felt unbalanced, unfair, Venus will come in and either gently remove the weights or remove the weights in such a way that there's a kind of a clang, 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 clang. The weights and the scale may go clang, 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 but whoever's doing it is either going to do it directly with a gift offering in a Venusian Libra evolved way, or is going to somehow do it in a I'm going to kind of knife you in the back and make my point and leave kind of way. We're talking about Venus and Libra. And fighting and knifing in the back and all this kind of stuff is rarely associated with Libra. But I will tell you again, Libra is a cardinal sign, and you do not futz about with someone who has a sun in Libra. They may be polite, they may strew sugar everywhere, they may be charming, they may be sweet, but once you scratch the surface, they're pretty damn dogmatic and they think they're clear about what they want and what the principles are. And in their mind, those principles are about balance, harmony, and peace. However, dogma makes clear that it is their idea of balance and harmony and peace. And if you act in ways that disturb that, it's not hell hath no fury. It's just watch your fingers and your legs and your back, because they will not come at you directly. But if they're pissed off, they're not going to let it go either. And with Venus in Libra, the word that comes to my mind when we look at a balancing of the scales is contracts. Written contracts, negotiating contracts, unwritten contracts. How do I want to be treated? Is this fair? Do we have a verbal contract or a non-verbal contract? Aries is the sign of the individual. Libra is the sign of the other party. The Aries Libra axis is the axis of identity. Who am I? Aries. But you can't get to Libra and getting to the Libra state requires that the identity question is answered and reviewed and revised, because you can't get to a handshake without being clear about who you are, what you, to use a Venusian word, value, and how it is that you are going to balance the scales. When I thought about Venus in Libra, I had such an interesting thought or epiphany. I thought about two tarot cards. The Two of Cups, which shows two people exchanging cups in a very congenial manner, looking at each other and sharing cups. And I thought about the Five of Swords, where someone is passive-aggressively stealing other people's swords and defeating them. And to my interesting surprise, I thought the Two of Cups was a Venus in Libra tarot card, but it wasn't. It was Venus in Cancer. And the Five of Swords was Venus in Aquarius. So I was thinking about two Venus cards. And so then when I was left with Venus coming to Libra, I realized again that my thinking, my processing as I look at charts and I observe people around me and all that kind of stuff, was clear that when it comes to Libra, while the energies are not quite as dry and harsh and crackly as the Venus in Aquarius, and while the energies are not quite as soft and congenial as Venus in Cancer, you do have to, it is the scales that you have to look at. There is a balancing, there is a sword. So, relationships, contracts, thinking about them, negotiations, agreements. Libra is the sign of contracts. Libra is the sign of the other party. Libra is the sign of marriage. Professional partnerships, personal partnerships. Courtliness, putting the other party first. What does it mean to be in relationship? It doesn't have to be a marriage partner or a business partner. It can be the other party. Do you feel like contracts are being broken? Do you feel like relationships are imbalanced? How are you going to go ahead and seek balance? Are you going to do it in an evolved way? And, well, let me talk about the unevolved way. The unevolved way is something like someone is working at a desk, okay, and they're absorbed in what they're doing. And you come in and you say, hey, I'm so sorry, I know you're working, but I don't mean to disturb you at all. Here's a piece of chocolate, I'm just going to leave this on the desk. I'm so sorry I disturbed you, I'm going to go now. For the poor person who's working at the desk, you have disturbed them, so I'm not going to disturb you at all is bullshit. Venusian bullshit. You saw that someone was working You claim you didn't have an intention to disturb them, but you disturbed them nevertheless. You were dogmatic and single-minded about what you wanted to do. It had to do with a relationship. It had to do with another person. You went ahead and did it. You apologized, but the apology was bullshit. You didn't look at the person and see if they're working and say, you know, I'm going to choose to have this conversation at a different time and in a different manner. I might give them the piece of chocolate when I see them for lunch. I might give them the piece of chocolate as they're leaving. I might send them an email and say, hey, there's a piece of chocolate here for you. Come whenever you're ready. That's not what you did. What you did is go in there, put the piece of chocolate, disturb them while claiming you're not going to disturb them, and leave the chocolate there and say, don't let it bother you. And for the poor person now, they have to decide, are they going to eat this chocolate? Are they going to throw it in the trash? Are they going to refrigerate it? Are they going to let it melt? The chocolate has taken up energy. This is what I mean by unevolved, passive-aggressive Libran dynamics in balancing the scales. An evolved way to do it is to, with the sign of Libra, put the other party first. It's not about what you want. It's not about what you want to say. It is about the other party and the spirit of cooperation and the spirit of a handshake. It is about getting along. No other sign, no other planetary placement is more uncomfortable with the ironic notion that you have to fight for peace. You have to fight for peace. You cannot, as much as I praise Venus over Mars, as much as I agree with the Tao Te Ching that we should stick to the female, yet acknowledge the male, you cannot discount Mars. You cannot discount the male principle. You can't just throw it to the side. And what is actively missing with Venus in Libra currently, because Mars has not moved in here, Mars moves into Libra on October the 4th and is not going to be happy here, what is actively missing is Mars. So when you have a strong Venus in Libra, there are three things to point out as I now wind down this video that I have really loved and enjoyed putting forth. Number one, relationship scales are looking to be balanced. September the 14th to October the 8th. Cardinal sign. Not passive at its core, not namby-pamby, pretty clear and pretty dogmatic. Maybe passive in its unevolved approach, not its evolved approach. The evolved approach requires that we understand that the planet is strong, but we seek to balance it. When a planet is weak, we seek to balance it. When a planet is strong, we seek to balance it. We try to inject a little bit of Mars so that we don't become false. Hey, I really want to maintain peace. But I'm going to needle you because I want something from you. In its evolved space, it is clearer, more direct, and a certain amount of Mars has been introduced into the dynamic. In its unevolved space, point number 3, the scales will get balanced. The scales will get balanced. But it may be that the absence of Mars and a strong Venus makes the method of doing this, and you could be on the receiving end of this, or you could be on the active end of this, means that the absence of Mars in this sign and a strong Venus now means that some of our